Hello, welcome to MJRRPG, a podcast for tabletop role-playing game reviews, replays, etc. and so forth. The following is a review for Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation, a supplement for Call of Cthulhu. Heinrich's Guide is available on DriveThruRPG in PDF or print on demand. In short, if you as a player make investigators that last longer than a one-shot, or if you as a keeper make scenarios that emphasize unique NPCs, this is an indispensable resource. Recommended as strongly as possible. Seriously, this book is lovely and should be sandwiched between the Keeper Rulebook and the Investigator Handbook in every Call of Cthulhu player and Keeper's bookcase. For players, Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation, henceforth Heinrich's Guide or just the Guide. The use is obvious. It makes characters. But as a Keeper, of all the Call of Cthulhu books I have, second only to the Keeper's Rulebook itself, Heinrich's Guide is the one I use the most. Through 156 pages of 140 tables, and you better like tables because this is all tables, short tables, long tables, linked tables, subtables, sub-subtables, tables for days, tables for life. The guide leads a character from birth to adulthood, and through all manners of twists and turns on the way, spitting out a fully formed investigator ready to take on the mythos, or go insane trying. Over the course of an hour, your investigator will have a detailed family, ancestry, distinguishing features, traits and beliefs, events from their childhood, adolescence, education, adulthood, and occupation. They'll likely have an array of acquaintances, each also colored in with personal features and connections to the investigator, from rivals to lovers. As an example, a few standout acquaintances from my players' investigators were a lover that was both the investigator's mentor and their institutionalized patient, a sadistic, wrinkle-faced younger sibling that the investigator nonetheless felt a fraternal need to protect, a down-to-earth, humble, very short-statured academic that also absolutely hates the investigator and will cause them bodily harm if the opportunity arises, and just a wizard that saved an investigator's life. I believe playing through character creation as a group is the ideal way to use the guide. It's exciting and often hilarious to take turns watching your table mates roll on the tables and see their investigators, your partners, take shape. The handouts are also much more fun to print out and physically pass around. More on those handouts later. Also, there are numerous times when further extrapolation can lead to connections between events, or even between investigators, that players and the Keeper can help each other with. Having the Keeper present also helps when events don't entirely line up with each other, or conflict with the game the Keeper planned. The guide does tend to create investigators that already have had fantastic experiences, at times exceeding what your average investigator will experience over the course of an actual Call of Cthulhu scenario. See the video review guide that I made with my Belgian Dreamlands Explorer. Depending on the Keeper, this may break the scenario they had lined up, and so it would be ideal to reroll any particular results as they come up, rather than when the player shows up to the table with a spell-slinging, lightning gun-wielding sorcerer of an investigator. This is not at all guaranteed to happen, and most investigators come out somewhere in the middle, relatively normal, with a couple of odd experiences that could be used as the reasons they become an investigator, instead of the normal person that would turn away from the mythos at the first whiff of it. And some characters will come out the complete opposite, with a fully mundane background, to the point the Keeper might want to let the player re-roll some events just to make things more interesting. For a frequent player, unless you only play one-shots with pre-made investigators, I would consider Heinrich's Guide as an equal companion to the Investigator's Handbook. And if I had to choose between the two of them, it would be a difficult choice indeed. As a Keeper, if I need to know something special about creatures and deities, I can peek into the Malleus Monstrorum, and if a spell is going to be slung the investigator's way, the Grand Grimoire is on hand. But more than monsters and magic, the most common thing I need references to, beyond the base rules themselves, are NPCs. Whether they be detailed characters central to the story with deep backgrounds and motivations, or briefly met weirdos with a single notable trait to stand out, Heinrich's Guide can quickly flesh out an NPC. It's hard to emphasize how useful it is. With 3 rolls, an NPC bartender at a speakeasy that would have been described as, he's a guy named Bob and he's big, becomes Quinn, a morose man with exceptionally smooth skin, who after some conversation is revealed to be exceptionally patriotic. That's something the players can latch onto. After a session or two of the players going back to Quinn for local gossip, you might be inclined to flesh him out further, rolling on some background events. Now you know he was indebted to the mob and was coerced to whack someone, but got caught, was exonerated, and now he prefers to pay off the debt quietly, running a mob speakeasy. Besides the tables, Heinrich's Guide also comes with 18 handouts in the form of player cards. These cards are earned at various times through various events, and each has some special effect. Some are immediately activated, others you hold on to until a special trigger, or you decide to use them, while others can be kept into the actual start of the game. They're a fantastic idea, and one I'd like to see used more. I do find they work best as physical handouts, as when you simply tell a player they have handout 15, they tend to forget about it. Harder to forget when you have a black and gold card with a 9-sided star in your hand. Outside of character creation, the guide is useful simply as inspiration. Some of the later tables are wild, and even after spending some time with the book, I haven't seen a good number of them, and I refuse to read the book from front to back. That would ruin the surprises. Reading them can give plenty of little ideas for future escapades. There are 2 points of, well, maybe 3, of not quite criticism I have for the guide, though they're not really shortcomings of the book itself, but more my personal preferences that aren't completely satisfied. The first is a lack of agency. While many events do give choices to players, and placing characteristics and skill percentages is often up to the players, and there is nothing stopping players and keepers from overruling anything the guide tells you to do, using the guide as is generally means rolling and doing what the results tell you. Coming off of character creation systems like in Mongoose Traveler 2e, I would have liked opportunities for the players to make more life choices, with roles deciding if they succeed or fail in those choices. For an example, an investigator's education is decided by a random roll. I would have liked the player to decide what kind of education they'd like to pursue, if any, and then make a roll to see if they get into the institution or not, with the following event table being determined based on that success or failure. This can be somewhat averted by the guide's suggested method of rolling 3 times on some or all tables and letting the player choose their preferred result, but it's not quite the same. The second is the reliance on the quick fire method's array of characteristic and skill percentages. This is the easiest way to do things and makes perfect sense to me why they use it, though I would have liked the guide to give some suggestions on how to use rolled characteristics or point buys. There's a small mention of point buy, but not much guidance on how to use it with the rest of the book, and using skill points based off characteristics, depending on occupations. My main group are big fans of full randomization when making characters, and everyone having the same array of starting numbers is a bit of a put-off. While it wouldn't be impossible to work more varied numbers in, it would require substantially changing how the guide works. One last point that is not a fault at all and actually more of a mark of quality is that the players and keepers alike will grow attached to these investigators. Given Call of Cthulhu's often sudden lethality, it can be a tough pill to swallow when a character you spent over an hour crafting and getting to know takes a fatal shotgun blast to the face in the first session. Some groups may decide using Pulp Cthulhu mechanics are necessary to warrant spending so much time making characters. My group, for example, has adapted the spend all luck at a minimum of 30 rule to save characters from sudden death. For all the sheer content you get though, these points barely matter. When Heinrich's guide's unfathomable number of permutations are combined with a player and keeper's creativity, we get an infinite amount of investigators and NPCs. If you're a player heading into a campaign, roll up an investigator, or 2, or 8, it is a Call of Cthulhu campaign after all, and if you're a keeper, give the player some NPCs to get invested in. This book is worth its weight in dead investigators. Just get it. Once again, you can buy Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Character Creation from DriveThruRPG in PDF or print on demand. I personally suggest getting a physical copy for ease of use, and because running your finger along the tables to find your results is always a joy. Thank you for listening. Until next time, have a good one.